It is Tuesday, February 15th, and we are here at the National Code Enforcement Network with a special guest today, Miss Hope Medina. And Hope is a complete rock star. Not only is she a plants examiner, inspector, instructor, consultant with Shums Coda, but she also leads the Sustainability Membership Council with ICC and does phenomenal work with the council itself. If you haven't checked it out, please do so. They do have a page on LinkedIn under ICC Sustainability Membership Council, as well as on Facebook. There are a few videos also on YouTube that you can check out on a lot of the works that Hope has done to include, up and coming careers in the building industry, how sustainability plays a fundamental role, her passion, which is water conservation, which is amazing. And in addition to that, before I lead into the awesome Hope, we also have a monthly coffee with the Sustainability Membership Council, which is every month. And this month, it's going to be held this week on the 18th. It's going to be in the morning. I think it's 9 to 10. If you can correct me if I'm wrong. Hope we can go into that. But this month's topic is going to be on equity and the codes, equity in the codes. So it's going to be an amazing topic, really cool stuff. And just for those of you that haven't joined, that are going to join in, with every conversation that you're having, it's one of those that you show up and you're having coffee with your friends and you're having conversations, and those conversations lead to other conversations that basically help us learn a little bit more and kind of dissect and do all the good things that we do as building industry professionals. So with that, Hope, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, that was such a wonderful introduction. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. We are so excited to learn more about you, and we're going to go into telling us a little bit about yourself. But first, before I let you do your thing again, I got to mention before I forget. So the first time I met Hope, y'all, it was at the 2019 ABM, and I was there as a board shadow with Chris Bridges. And Chris was telling me, okay, Cece, you're in here, you take it all in, learn all the things, get to know everybody. And then Hope was kind of at a corner where we're getting ready for the board of directors meeting. And he said, that one right there, Hope, she's a rock star. You got to get to know her, attach to her, pick her brain, connect. And I was like, you got it. So I said, mental note, I got to get to know Hope. So with that, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've really had a great opportunity that I have kind of been able to fill all of the positions within a building department, which is nice because I started off to get into this. I started off as a permit tech, which was fantastic because I really got the opportunity to do a lot of work with our code enforcement and a lot of the contractors that were in the jurisdiction that I was at, and getting to know the inspectors and plans examiners and how everything works, which was great when I was making the next step, when I started studying for all of my certifications to become an inspector. And then I had a absolutely fantastic plans examiner that I worked with, because my thought was, as a permit tech, I saw that we had one plans examiner who was insanely overloaded with doing plan reviews. And I thought that's really something that I can assist with, because we had the over-the-counter plan review day. And so I thought, well, that's something that I could assist with, where, he doesn't have to do it all by himself. And I talked to him about it. Unfortunately, my building official didn't like the idea of me moving on in my career path, and thought that that was the spot that I should say. But my plans examiner, who I credit so much to my success in the fact that he was willing, he would give me plans like after work. It was all secret. And nothing was done in the public. I would take them home. I'd look at them. I'd write what I saw wrong, and then I'd bring it back, and we'd have coffee. And in that coffee time, we would discuss, now, why did you call this out? Or why did you say that? And I was able to really learn and develop that way. And it was it was just amazing. And, just kind of speaking about how you just have that person that steps in at the right time to really help facilitate things. I have been very blessed that not only did I have that plans examiner at that time, when I left that jurisdiction and I went to a new jurisdiction, I had the most fantastic building official there that really kind of set my path going. He took a chance with me because I didn't have any experience. I had the certifications to be an inspector, but didn't have the opportunity to really get that experience. And he took a shot on me and said, okay, I see you have the willingness, the desire to learn. I think we can, train me. And they did. I think I did a pretty good job with that. And he was amazing and said, you know what, I think there's a lot that you can do. And one of the things he did is got me involved with the Colorado chapter of ICC, which is our local ICC chapter. And I was able to get involved with the code change committee. And with that, I got to experience how the codes were developed. And my very, very first code that I got to go to was the 2012 IGCC. Oh, wow. And a lot of people think that like my passion for sustainability and energy came because, I kind of hit that path where nobody was really focusing on energy and nobody was really focusing on sustainability because it was more of a newer topic to the building industry, right? Walls were always put up this way and, you always have pipes going here or, ducts going there type of deal. And energy was a new way of thinking things. But as crazy as that sounds, I, as a kid, actually did a lot of things that were sustainable, recycling. We would go out and, do a lot of cleanup and thinking about things. And my dad, I have to contribute a lot of my building to my dad because he kind of got me on the path for sustainability with a lot of his thoughts and items that he would practice. And like one of my favorite or fondest memories is the fact that when I was younger, he worked for the Denver Fire Department here. He was on the force for 25 years, and he did many different roles: search and rescue, hazmat, all that. But the latter probably 15 or so years, he was an arson investigator. Well, to become an arson investigator, you have to go and get all these certifications. And part of it is learning, the buildings. And so when he was studying for that, I was probably 10-ish or something. He would take me to downtown Denver and he would talk to me about all of these buildings. And, do you know why you see those iron stars on that wall? Well, that means it's a heavy timber building, just little things that, I picked up. I can't say that that's why I got into the whole, construction and building industry, but I know that definitely stuck with me a little bit.
That's really amazing. That is so amazing, Hope. And you know what? There's a couple of things that I picked up on that. And the first one is just talking about your plan check experience. And I think that I think is a great story because of the fact that, you don't always get the support, although there are many awesome mentors out there. But I can relate to you in the sense that one of the things that was suggested for me was go ask for those throwaways, right? Those red line throwaways. Hey, do you have any extra plans and any blueprints I can review and read? I'll stick my nose into them, make my own notes, and then, ask the questions. And so that is really awesome that you had that opportunity to do that. And in addition to that, I took a conservation, land use conservation class as part of my college education. And I had no clue about your carbon footprint. I had no clue about any of that, how that affects everything. And I got to tell you that as I was going through that class, I was like, oh my gosh, there is so much to consider, so much about reducing your carbon footprint, so much of how that affects our environment and how we live in it and how we respect it and conserve. But in addition to that, I remember there was the first round of trainings when we started talking about green building, right? And I took a class over at the Sacramento Municipal Utility District, and they went through construction types and VOCs and what that means, and all that cool stuff. And I was just blown away because it's a whole nother level of construction that we weren't really tapping into at the time for a long time. So really diving into that was like, this is kind of remarkable stuff. So I went through my green building professional certification, and I got to tell you, I recommend it just like you. So when I see you kind of doing your thing, and for those of us that haven't seen Hope in action, oh my gosh, you have to see her in action because she is so passionate about this stuff, hence her background.
Oh
But
yeah.
it's great. That is really great. I'm really enjoying hearing how that all kind of impacted and helped kind of mold where you're at right now.
Yes.
We really so
Oh
we
no,
really
go ahead.
love so let me chime in here. We really love bringing folks with the passion of their profession into our program. And it's one of the reasons we invited you. My story with Hope is I've seen Hope on the internet. She posts about energy and about this, and I'm like, oh wow, that's interesting. Me as a code enforcement guy, not a building guy, I really don't know much, but in learning code enforcement, sometimes there's a nexus to everything, whether it be water conservation ordinances or somebody's doing construction and you're like, hey, they're not doing X, Y, and Z. So, I just happened to see her, sitting at a hotel. We were at the annual business meeting. I'm like, hey, you're Hope. She's like, hey, you're Pete. We kind of knew each other from the internet, which is crazy, but it felt like I already knew her. And one of the things I said, hey, I need you to come on the show. You're passionate about energy. I want people in code enforcement to learn about energy. And one of the things that I also caught on, same thing with Cecilia, when you talked about doing these clandestine plans, plans examiners. A lot of times, you're so good at being a permit tech. Why would somebody want to lose you? But being a good manager, somebody has to recognize that you have additional talents and want you to grow. And sometimes that path isn't there. So when you went to your next jurisdiction and you got that opportunity to grow, that sometimes it's scary to make that change. And you know what? You have a really good job, but you're not growing. And a lot of times you have to get out of that comfort zone because you when you talk about being 10 years old and doing stuff with your dad. I have a 6-year-old son, and I do TikToks with my son with on code
Oh
enforcement.
yeah.
Yeah, so and it's funny because I asked him the other day what he wanted to be. He said either ice cream man because I get free ice cream, or be a code enforcement officer that does TikToks.
That's awesome.
To me, it's like what this next generation of your story and the technical trade program that ICC is putting together for the next generation is so important. And when you talk about sustainability, people realize that we're working on a safer built environment, and maybe that safe and built environment isn't today. That construction is we're setting it for the future to be in a safer, have better air quality, better better materials and things like that. So now, Hope, before let me, I always like to kind of scale back a little bit to, what got you, how'd you end up being a permit tech, first of all? And then we'll go into, your path into sustainability.
Well, it ended up being, I had been trying to get into that area. I honestly couldn't tell you what it was that spurred me to get in that, because at the time, I wasn't in the construction industry. I didn't start off in the construction industry. My dad being a fireman, a lot of times they do that construction on the side deal.
Yeah.
And so I had that, aspect of it. I did a lot of like helping build and stuff, but I didn't get the opportunity to really go in there. And I have always found it interesting, and I'd always had like a desire, and I can't explain it other than that. And a position came up, and I thought, well, I'll give it a shot, and I was able to get it. And the really fun thing, and I know this is going to sound odd to most people, but the really fun thing for me was studying to get my permit tech certification, because while I had a great understanding of what the codes were and, all the various types of codes and all that, I hadn't had the opportunity really to, dive in and really get to know it very intimately. And that was like the best for me. And I just loved it. And then since then, I just kind of moved with it.
What's funny? It's Cecilia and Rachel call themselves code nerds. And it's funny because they dive into these books, and you go through a lot of jurisdictions, but you never see people crack open those books. They just kind of learn from the previous guy, and it's funny like that because a lot of times there's so much growth with learning these model codes, whether it be the green code or your building code. There's property maintenance code. There's always changes.
Mhm.
And it happens. You belong to code development, so you have the changes. You're part of that change, which is amazing. And you're one of the reasons we say you're a rock star, because you're very involved. Because you see something, you're like, hey, that needs to change, or we need to improve on this, or hey, that's a little bit outdated. And we have to take these steps back because the permit tech that doing the clandestine plan checks today,
Mhm.
maybe they're going to be the next future leaders of tomorrow, and we have to set that example, which is something that you've done, and I really appreciate you for that. And one of the things that I also, when you got into from permit checks to plan check, now other than like loving like Earth Day and like when you're a little girl and stuff like that, what actually caught your eye with sustainability? But before we get that, for this is most of our audience is code enforcement officers. So
Yeah.
what is sustainability? What is what are some of the components that that we're looking to improve on?
Well, I think one of the first things I want to dispel is the myth that, energy and sustainability is not a life safety issue, because I hear that quite often. I think from the building side, but I think honestly, the code official side, being out there and seeing it from a different perspective, I find that they're more in tune with the fact that this is, a life safety issue. It's a life style issue, I suppose. But so for sustainability, it also kind of gets lumped into that it's an energy thing, like it's above what the energy code is. And while there are some energy components to it, there's an awful lot of things that really kind of focus outside of building construction. You have looking at the site, the type of site that you're going to build on. Is that a gray field? Is it a brown field? Is it a green field? And being mindful to the fact that we don't necessarily want to destroy a green field. We want to keep that green field and utilize an area that maybe was previously developed. The other thing is also, a lot of it is dealing with the type of plants that are in there, the type of landscaping that goes in. Is that, landscape, sustainable? Does it have the right type of water? Are you putting in a palm tree, in an area that, has too much water? Or are you trying to put in that beautiful, willow tree in an area that has absolutely no water, right? So there's, some of that, and making sure that you aren't introducing like those invasive plants into it, and knowing, where your topography is. Let's build with the environment as opposed to against the environment. And like I said, I find that, when you start talking about sustainability, you might get that glazed over look with, by some code officials, or, building officials and so forth, because that's not their area of maybe recognition for it. And what I found is, quite often, like planners will be really in tune with, sustainability and even energy components. And I find that code enforcement is another department that really is in tune with that aspect of it. And hopefully, we can slowly transition and get that more readily recognizable on the building side of things. And I see it. I mean, it's coming. But I feel like a lot of the up and coming aspect is getting more code enforcement involved with this, because I think they can really have an impact on it. I know that sometimes you are have to enforce like the property maintenance code, and there are some sustainability aspects that are being introduced in that, and are already involved with that. And I think that I look forward to seeing more involvement from code enforcement, especially like at the hearings. We always talk about getting active and making sure you vote for your codes, and that campaign's coming back, by the way. But for the Sustainability Membership Council, we have our Building Safety Month video series that we do every for the last 5 or 6 years. And so every day we put a video out that's on the topic of within those weekly themes. But we always have our catchphrase of what it'll be this year. And this year it's your actions, your codes, which I think is so important. Is, you need to make sure that you have some sort of action, whether it's listening to the hearings or listening to, people talking about what their code change ideas are. And if you are a governmental voting member, get on CDP and vote. Even if you go and vote for only 3 code change proposals, get involved with the process. Your actions really are your codes. So that's my commercial.
That's so awesome. And I'll tell you, with code enforcement, the first time I ever dealt with any sustainability is I was in the city of Montebello. Montebello
Mhm.
was a lot of the areas were built on old junk like a junkyards. So
Oh, yeah.
and we had a brownfield that had a sunset date. For many folks don't really know what first of all, what is a brownfield?
Brownfield is where, okay, now let me make sure, because grayfield and brownfield are 2 different things. And one is, it was a previously developed that has been, for various reasons, has been demolished or removed. And
Yeah.
so those are the type of developments that we really want to utilize, and not the greenfields. The greenfields are where it's, um, exactly what it sounds like. It's
Sure.
that picturesque, area. And those are the types of areas we want to leave, green. And then the gray field, I believe it is where there's an issue with that particular area, contaminant or what
Yeah.
have you. So
So in the city of Montebello, we had an area where it was actually contaminated, and
hmm.
there was a sunset date where it had become an allowable use for industrial. Well, it came to that time where it was I think it was a 50-year sunset date, and they're like, hey, it's up. We have to do something about it. So we have to go out. So we had to go out there, and code enforcement had to go out there and start talking to them. So we had to learn a little bit about the actual the land, and saying, hey, there's a sunset date. It's in our municipal code. We have to enforce it. There was a lot of obviously this is one of those. It becomes a political issue because a lot of these folks are now having to relocate or find other areas to go to, because now they have to deal with that particular land area. And what ended up happening, well, good for me, was what do you call it? They extended the sunset date for another 20 years, which
Hmm.
it is what it is. That's the council direction. But at that time, that was the first time I ever had to deal with any type of sustainability issue, where I had to learn the municipal code and what the why it was put there. So I had to do some research so I can explain it to these property owners. And at the end of the day, I mean, that city was just full of issues. But and these are things that you kind of like we had oil fields that were
Yeah,
now
yeah.
dry. So now there's redevelopment that's going to have to go in. So there was all these land studies, and you had the different types of organizations coming in saying, hey, you shouldn't build on that. We have this endangered gnat there, so you can't build on it. The Sierra Club, a couple lawsuits, and you get to learn so much on how the land use, which was more of a zoning issue, also ties in with some of these topography issues that you're always dealing with. So for me, I got to learn a little bit about sustainability. And just on top of that, during the California drought, many cities enacted these water conservation ordinances,
Yes.
which is, I know, is your jam, because I see the water faucet in the back with the drip. So, that's another issue that a lot of code enforcement officers deal with, is water conservation ordinances. Can you talk a little bit about, the importance of water conservation?
Oh, absolutely. And quite honestly, whether you're, I think quite often when you start talking about water conservation, instantly people think of, well, that's a Southwest problem. That's a California problem. And it's not often understood that in the last 20 years, a drought has affected every single state within this country, and significant droughts. And you can go back and look at the drought maps, for the last 20 years, and be able to really see, where it's gone and what it looks like. Now, mind you, yes, the Southwest is, we're a deserted area. I mean, the fact is, we may not have, sand dunes all over the place, but we are a deserted area. And so when you start talking about that, there has to be an understanding that there's only a finite amount of water to sustain, all of us that are wanting to live in this, these types of areas. And so the slightest thing can really affect, the amount of water, whether it's we didn't get our snowpack, because, if we don't get our snowpack, you guys don't get your water, Texas doesn't get their water, it's just, one of those things. But what ends up happening is, communities have to think about, so what are we going to do? Because we don't have the water in the reservoir to last us for the rest of the year. And so things start getting put into place, such as, maybe you can't water except for one day a week. And quite often, developers and other entities don't think about the type of grass that they put in the lawn. They want that Kentucky grass that grows great in that area because they have the moisture to do it. And they don't want it to be, a not beautiful green grass that happens there. Well, when they're gone, it's the homeowner then is thinking about, well, I want to make sure that my grass is green. And so what they do is they water. Whether or not they're only permitted to water once a week, they need to keep that grass green. And so they water. And so often, code enforcement ends up getting called out because you're watering your grass on a day that isn't your designated day. Or the other one that kills me, just absolutely kills me, is they water so much, and how they direct their emitters, whatever choice they use for watering their grass, is you see it, one, it's just spraying on the sidewalk going into the gutter, or they're watering so much because they only get one day to water. So they're going to water it the whole 8 hours that they're gone to work. And you see all that water just flowing off the grass onto the sidewalk, into the gutter, and then, down into the systems. And that's, those types of things just kill me, because I know, there's a lot of things that I know, because I like to go and, deal with a lot of water issues. And so there's that recognition that, code enforcement, unfortunately, has to go and regulate human behavior. right? And unfortunately, you do that a lot. I mean, whether it's, the junk heap that's in front of the lawn, for as property maintenance, or maybe they do have that invasive plant that's all over the place. But unfortunately, I think the water, I don't want to say police, that I think is kind of coming. Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think that's going to be more of the norm
Yeah.
than the other, because we do have that finite amount of water, and we have to share it with, all the people that are coming into our communities, which is great, because people like to increase their tax base, and I understand that, but we also have to have the water to sustain them. And it's not just, do we have the water to build, and people think of it until they move in type of deal. Do you have the water to sustain that family of 5 for the next 25 years? And I think there's going to be more forward thinking on that aspect. And I think there's also going to be, unfortunately, a lot more work for code enforcement around
Well,
water. Sorry.
with code enforcement, there's always, we're constantly evolving.
Yeah.
I personally went to two emergency droughts, and in both they had ordinances for, what they call us, the water police, and it happens, and that's what we're called. And then sometimes that becomes a priority for the city, especially if there's a real bad drought. Sometimes people can only water 2 days a week, or only on odd days, or it just depends on how the city writes the ordinance. Now, sometimes they say you can only water between these times and these times, because that's the most efficient, or you can only run it 30 minutes at a time, or there's people, and trust me, there's people that will call, like,
oh, I'm sure
he ran his thing for 35 minutes, and I'm like, okay, well, by the time I get there, it's fine. Well, but it's not a priority, but in some communities they make it a priority.
Yeah.
And other things that we do see is, you do see the uh, folks that don't fix the leaks, or leave, they have, like, spills, or, I mean, you see all sorts of stuff with water conservation. And it's hard to tell people, hey, you can't wash your car, or, well, you have to wash it on the grass, you can't wash it on the street. And because now you can use the water to water your grass, and then you get into the whole, like, hey, your grass is brown where it should, and it's supposed to be green. So you get these issues with code enforcement, where, like, we're trying to do our best to conserve the water, but then there's when everybody's grass is brown, and you're like, hey, you're not allowed to have brown grass. Well, you're not letting me water, and we get into those issues. So then we have to make arrangements, like, say, hey, maybe think about drought tolerant landscaping. Here's a plan, and a lot of jurisdictions do come up with some good plans. So we have a question from one of our members. Do you think that there's political will for moratoriums on construction for water deprived areas, given the affordable housing concerns with the current?
That is an excellent question, and I really like when all of this really kind of came to a head for, like, down in Santa Fe, and what they did, and so that construction could continue. The builders had to bank water, and to be able to bank water, they had to put in and install, high efficacy water fixtures. And that was a way of being able to do it. They actually had a program where they had 1 million toilets, I think it was, that were the 1.8, I want to say the 1.8. And so they were swapping out all these 5-gallon toilets for the 1.8. And that was how they were partially able to bank that water to be able to continue to build. I think when things start moving, and there is that realization that you have to be able to, as a community, as a city, you have to be able to provide that water for them to drink, and have some sort of hygiene. Maybe not water your grass so much, but you have to at least provide the quote unquote basic aspect of water, I think you're going to start seeing a lot of communities, maybe not so much do a moratorium, but hopefully they look towards some of the other examples that other communities have used to be able to still allow for growth, because that is the reality. But the other part of that reality is currently we do not have the water for what we have right now, let alone any more that's coming in.
Yeah, and sometimes in some parts of the nation, you do see some of the code officers regulating agricultural water use,
Mhm.
and
Oh yeah.
so you have that issue, and and another component get to code enforcement is that a lot of times we have to be that voice, because I remember I was a recipient of those toilets. They weren't my favorite toilets at first, but you know what, and then I got used to them. And so same thing with some there was grants where the city was giving out those water those shower heads.
Mhm.
There's a lot of things. There was programs out there for there was companies out there receiving grants to install drought tolerant landscaping. A lot of the water companies got those. So I mean, and they also, there's an education component on, like you said, what type of you know plants are appropriate for that certain region. Like you said, you don't you don't want to plant water consuming something that needs a like constant water all the time. Like there's some statistic about walnuts.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Every walnut, they need so much water. So there's always that educational component. And now you sit on some of these committees for what are something that the sustainability committee is working on outreach, and other than the videos that you stated?
Sustainability actually has a lot of programs that they're trying to instill. One is, as mentioned earlier, we have our monthly coffee with the SMC that anybody is invited and everybody is invited to attend. That we have the discussion, we develop those relationships, and sometimes we get where people come in and they just have the question, and they get the opportunity to kind of pick quite a few brains and what's going on in other communities that are dealing with the type of situation. The other thing is it's a campaign that we have done in the past in conjunction with the ELMC, which is the Emerging Leaders Membership Council. And I urge you, if you're not going to be a member of the SMC, then become a member of the ELMC, because they are a great membership council outside of the SMC, of course. But but what we do is we have a campaign that we are starting up again. It's the Vote for Your Codes campaign. And the idea is, we really want to get everybody involved with voting for your codes and participating, whether that's, you vote on CDP Access, you submit a code change proposal, you listen, like I said, onto the streaming event of when the hearings are going on, but to participate in some way, shape, or form. Because the reality is, quite often people complain about, well, that's what, the building code said, and that's what the energy code says, and that's what property maintenance said, but that's not, it's like, but you had the opportunity to say something. So this is your chance to do it in whatever shape or form that is. Even if it happens to be that you are not able to attend the hearings and go, but can you cover somebody so that somebody else is able to go and experience, being able to attend? Because being able to sit even one day at a code hearing really opens your eyes as far as how the process works, the passion that's involved with it. And you get an understanding too of, how these codes are developed, why that came in. You may not understand, what that provision is trying to say and trying to do, but you go to that code hearing and all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, that makes all the difference in the world. So that's one of the things that we are really working towards. Another aspect that we have been promoting for quite a bit is our ICC designation, which is our Certified Sustainability Professional, the CSP, which if you see any emails from me or anything, you'll see the designation CSP, which I'm very proud of, because that was, I helped develop that particular designation 10 years ago, however long ago it was that we were working on it. And I think it's a great way of being able to get involved and to do it. And then of course we have our outright advocacy. We advocate for many things, such as the IGCC, the International Green Construction Code. When everything shifted in the 2018, where the technical content was coming from ASHRAE 189.1 and ICC was going to be handled the administrative side of it, SMC made sure that things were going, kind of according to quote unquote plan, I guess you could say. And when things started to develop that was not conducive to the ICC membership, such as the energy chapter, they were only going to reference the components of ASHRAE 90.1 and not make any reference whatsoever to the IECC. And we stepped in on behalf of the membership and brought this to the board, and we brought it with options for them, whether it was, create a separate appendix, include, the sections, the IECC sections within that particular chapter, or just for the IGCC within that would be sold within the United States, only reference the IECC. And ultimately what happened is the compromise happened and they created a separate appendix that just dealt with those particular references to the IECC. So we do things along those lines. We're a great advocacy for the membership when it comes to sustainability aspects or energy aspects. So if you have anything, please feel free to reach out to us, because we champion causes, where we can and as we see fit. So
I love seeing the passion. I mean, you just went boom right here. and it's funny because you get flowing with talking about code or energy and sustainability, and you start talking, and it's funny because a lot of times it becomes foreign to everybody else, and I love the way you kind of break it down to make it a little bit more more understandable for somebody that may not know about sustainability. And I think even when I talk about code and I bring it down to say, hey, yeah, well, we're the water police, but this is why we do what we do. And, end of the day, so there's a lot of resources. I know you're a regular at the Next Generation Water Summit, which is in for builders, which is in Santa Fe, New Mexico, correct? Can you tell us a little bit about that summit?
Yes, it's one of my favorite things to do. I have worked on the National Green Building Standard, which is ICC 700. It deals with kind of the residential side of sustainable construction. And I also vice chair the water efficiency subcommittee for that particular committee. And one of the other members within that group, I guess, kind of understood the passion that I had. And there was a new water rating metrics that was introduced into the National Green Building Standard that was kind of based off of a program that Santa Fe was doing. And I was a big proponent of it. I liked it, and I really thought it was a good idea. But ultimately what happened is this particular person said, would you mind coming to the Next Generation Summit and speak about this new program pathway that it's available in the National Green Building Standard? I said, sure, why not? I'm good at talking. I can do that. So Michael and myself came down and we talked about, how this all came about, what was in it, what was involved with it. And I was surprised. I had a couple of people that were very combative in their questions, but I knew that going into it when I saw them sitting there at the session. And ever since that moment, apparently I got some really high marks from people. Their comments about what I had done had resonated. And so since that moment, I've been what I call their token IECC code presenter, because I've brought them various different IECC, IGCC, you name it. And I don't know, it's a great time. I like how it was developed. And one of the things that really impressed me was they open it up to the public. It's not just for, a certain type of people. They're the only ones that can do it. They have it open up to the public, and for the residents of Santa Fe, it's free to be able to attend it. And they get so much knowledge. What amazes me is you'll be talking about gray water, and they'll start talking very specific information that you would expect to come from, a builder or, building inspector, whatever, something along that field, as opposed to a homeowner who's doing the right thing and trying to make sure that they're putting the correct type of system in there. It's just fantastic. I love going and doing that every single year. So,
It's funny. It's when you're so passionate, you get pulled in so many different directions, and it's funny working for municipalities, because we're both in the private sector now, and it's amazing how there's so much stuff to do, in the code world and energy world, there's in the sustainability world, there's so much stuff to do that you get dragged all over. All of a sudden, you're doing, you're talking about, you just mentioned gray water, and for us, when we deal with people, just like maybe with sustainability, people say, "Hey, that's hippie talk, and you're just costing me money." You know, with code enforcement, like, "Hey, you're the lawn police. Now I'm having to re-roof my house because now you're going to cost me money." We're in the same thing. You're looking at it in the forward. We're looking at it in the now, and we're looking, "Hey, there was a lack of property maintenance back there," and you're looking at, "Hey, there was a lack of building some green stuff today, where tomorrow it's going to make a difference." And guess what? Code enforcement is going to eventually catch up and have to enforce it. So it's a vicious little cycle and stuff. So, and it's and people really need to understand that it's all intertwined. And I love seeing the passion that you have for your craft, because just talking to you, I can just see you getting all giddy and stuff. It's good stuff, because I get giddy about code enforcement. Cecilia gets giddy about the building code and all this, and it's just exciting. It's an exciting time. I love seeing you at work, just doing your sustainability. That's not my lane, but me as a code official, I can respect the whole sustainability, and I've seen the work that people have done. I see Andrea and the emergent leaders committee, and it's just awesome to watch all these individuals kind of just blossom and grow and teach the profession. And one of the things that we see is many states have different type of ordinances or regulations when it comes to the green code or sustainability, and a lot of times you are a reference to help them understand, maybe formulating their particular codes and stuff like that. So thank you for that. So
I'm always happy to help where I can. And it's so funny that you bring up that, you're down the road in enforcing the green that we're trying to get in. And, one of the things is, for Colorado, we have extremely strict laws when it comes to water. And because of that, there's a lot of well, I don't want to touch it, but we had the opportunity that we could start doing rainwater harvesting, but you're only allowed a certain number of gallons that you can utilize, and it can only be this and that. So now, you talk about that, and it's like, yep, code enforcement's going to have to go out and say, "Hey, we know you're trying to be sustainable and do the right thing, but you can't have 2 barrels here." So.
And we could say, "Hey, and it has to be covered because now you're causing mosquito
Oh,
harvesting."
yes.
So, and like I said, there's things that intertwine, even even in the construction, the insulation that's being put in, solar. I mean, there's so many things with sustainability moving forward and leaving that carbon footprint, like Cecilia was talking about. I mean, we have to take all this into consideration, because people will inherently try to save the most money when doing their construction work. because you know what? Why do I need why do I need these type of windows? Well, what's wrong with, like, if I knock down this wall and just put in my old windows back in? They were perfectly good windows. You're like, well, they don't meet the, they're not good for sustaining heat, or keeping in the heat or keeping out the cold. So so there's a reason why those windows are rated a certain type, and how there's better standards that keep developing. So I mean, it all has to do with each other. And as code enforcement officials, that you have to recognize the value in what the sustainability membership's doing, and just learn with it. It's another tool in the tool belt for code enforcement. So
It is. And here's something for you. Did you know that the ancient Romans actually required that in their bathhouses you had to install glass in the windows? And the reason for that is because you are utilizing heat to heat those bathhouses. And so to keep the heat in, you had to have glass on your windows. So it's not a new concept. It's been around for a long time.
I don't see many bathhouses nowadays, but
Yeah, well, yeah.
yeah, that's funny. But no, it's good. And even going back to even older, we always teach the Hammurabi Code, and
Yeah, yeah.
and that's like years, and like and you're thinking, I'm like, wow, that stuff's been around. I mean, but nowadays you get a visit from code enforcement, and nowadays you're not put to death by your neighbor. Which was in their code back in the day, so. And
We've evolved.
right. So, but no, it's good stuff, and I really appreciate you being. I'm sorry Cecilia had to run, but she is in a municipality. She's coming on to come into the private sector. She'll have more time to concentrate on this stuff, just like you have time to concentrate on your energy code.
Yeah.
It just comes with that territory. So, with that, Hope, thank you for being the rock star that you are. Thank you for coming on the show. It was a pleasure meeting you at the annual business meeting in Pittsburgh. And just for you guys that have never attended annual business meeting, it's great networking. We have a lot of guests that came on to the show because of that networking. And you know what? The people that are rock stars and are passionate about their craft are always willing and able to help. They're always going to do it. Like Hope, didn't even know her, saying, I'm like, hey, I want you on the show. She's like, okay. And then here she is today, and I love it. I appreciate the time that you gave us and the knowledge. And, do you have any last words before we sign off?
Um, just thank you so much for having me on here and allowing me to I guess chat about things that I'm passionate about. But the one thing I guess I just want to say is, I'm very big on mentoring kind of the next generation coming into it, and I do a lot of work on that. So keep in mind that hopefully you can find that person to pass along all the great experiences and all the knowledge that you've been able to develop. That's my plea. Whether it's code enforcement or sustainability, just pass it along.
And you know what? The passionate people will give you the information free of charge.
Yeah. Oh,
So,
absolutely.
so and they'll support you in your, whatever crazy ideas you have, and because we know we have them, Hope.
I know.
Right?
Yes,
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah. Well, everybody, thank you for joining us today, and thank you, Hope, again for coming on the show. With that, I will bid everybody goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.